And Tuesdays in the middle school are really hard. They're exciting and they're great, but they're hard because, as you know, we have pizza on Wednesdays, and Tuesdays are the day that we are collecting the pizza orders and we're putting them in the database, and there are some kids that can do that in about 5 minutes and some that maybe take 20, and Karen and I are problem solving, and then those kids that are done so quickly, what do they do? And then we also have a special in the afternoon, so we have to be really on our game on Tuesdays. And that works out well because we have Mondays to set that up, and we're pretty well organized. The kids know what their expectations are. That's a problem when a Tuesday happens on a Monday, as was this past Tuesday, because we are walking in from a 3-day weekend and not really completely with our feet on the ground. So that's the first thing to know. The second thing is just a quick background about how we do math in middle school. And I hear very often about how are you implementing some of our Montessori fundamentals? And 8th grade is the perfect place to see this because students have a set sequence that they're working through at all the grades. But in 8th grade, we have this book that works very nicely. And I've borrowed from Nancy Atwell's In the Middle about writing workshop, and I start each class with a status of the class. And by 8th grade, they are great at this. They are starting before I even get going, and they'll say, so-and-so and I are going to do a lesson, and we're all set. We just need to practice and check our answers. Somebody else says, I'm going to need a lesson on such and such because I had these 3 questions from my homework. Somebody else says, I'm reviewing for the test, and I'll be ready to take it on Wednesday. And they're going, and I am circulating, and they're helping each other, and it's magical. Come see it anytime. Meanwhile, I've got my spreadsheets of, wait, I thought you were supposed to be on section 2-6, and so that's the way that we do math. So this particular Tuesday, this past Tuesday, I was kind of happy to see that things lined up, that I had about 5 kids taking a test. Because it's a Tuesday on a Monday. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to finish up with pizza lunches, and they can just flow right into a test when they're ready. They know the routine. So as I was checking in with the students ahead of time and kind of going through who had what, reminding them, you 2 have a test, George and Matthew started doing the middle school shuffle of, about that. What? And I moved into a little bit of this old school middle school teacher of, this test was really supposed to be on Thursday, but you said you needed the day for review, and I respected that, and then you had skiing on Friday and the day off, so we're about a week behind on this, and I think I probably used that word. What's up? And they're like, well, we really wanted to talk to you about that because we think we need another day. So then look, what's the problem? Well, it's section 3-8 on sets. And I said, look, did you do your vocabulary cards? It's all vocabulary. Did you study this? I probably used that tone with them. And they said, no, we did. We did our vocabulary. And I said, all right, I'll meet with you in a few minutes and figure it out. So a few minutes come, and I said, listen, if you really need an extra day, I hope that you have a specific problem that you have questions about, that you have prepared for. And they listened to me very politely, didn't say a word. And they said, as a matter of fact, 3-8, problem 37. And then Matthew continues, he goes, I did it, and I got the right answer, but it seemed to take a while, and I think there's probably a more efficient method, and I was hoping we could go over that. Oh my God. And George said, yeah, he checked in with me, and I used a different way, and I got a different answer, but so we're hoping we can sort that out. Well, I'd be lying if I said that I was not completely prepared to be digging into that level of math at this point while I'm also sorting out pizza lunches, and I knew that Madison had been absent and she needed a lesson. And so I did the Montessori dodge, and I said, David, you've done 3-8. Can you come give these boys a hand while I finish up with these other things? And David was eager to do that, and so I walked away and I figured out that the child in Children's House, one who needed 1 pepperoni and 1 cheese slice instead of 2 pepperonis. We got that sorted out. And then the kid in Upper L that Ava was concerned about because they hadn't paid, we sorted that out. And I walked back, and the classic Montessori ending would be, and David had taught them how to do it, and they were ready for the test. That's not what happened. So David's at the board, and he's explaining this thing that makes sense to him, and Matthew and George's eyes are swimming, and I know that he's on the right track, but it's not quite making sense, and that's when I said, I can't dodge this. I grabbed my tea, grabbed the expo marker, and said, all right, give me the problem. Now, I hate to do this to you, but you have to hear this problem in order to really understand what we're talking about. So Matthew reads just exactly as I have taught them to do word problems, and that's skip over the stuff that doesn't matter. Take a look at that quickly, get to the heart of the problem, because we know you have word problems, all this extraneous. So he reads this. Blood type is determined partly by which antigens a red blood cell has. An antigen is a protein on the surface of a red blood cell. Type A contains the A antigen, type B contains the B antigen, type AB contains both A and B antigens. Type O does not have any antigens. A hospital has 25 patients with an A antigen, 17 with the B antigen, 10 with A and B antigens, and 30 without A or B antigens. How many patients are represented by the data? I didn't know. I went, okay, we got this. How can a Venn diagram help you to solve the problem? Well, that's great. So I'm at the board, and I've got a Venn diagram going. What strategies can you use to complete the Venn diagram? So this wants you to discuss your process. And that's where the boys, by the way, had already come up with a correct answer for this. So I'm at the board, and I've got the Venn diagrams, and we're writing it down. And David and I are like, no, how about this? And we are actually like pulling this expo marker back and forth from each other. And Matthew has read it now several times, and George is taking notes. And if you walked in, it would just be the four of us are full-blown into this problem. So we come up with a solution, and we're off by 10. And we know we can look at this and say, oh, as George said, no, you've got to subtract 10 from both sides. And this kind of makes sense to us, but we can't really explain why. So I could have just said, yeah, good enough. We're really not going to need that, and move on. Because this is a very specific part of this lesson. But I thought, oh, let's dig in a little bit deeper, and we do that. And I said, antigens, maybe there's something we're missing. So I said, Victor, come and join us. So now you've got me, David, Victor, Matthew, George, all completely knee-deep in the weeds of this problem. And so Victor starts explaining antigens. We're like, ooh. Meanwhile, I said, Matthew, just read it one more time. And he does. So we've got Victor explaining, David at the board, Matthew reading, and all of us at the same time went, oh! And we all start talking over each other because we see it. We see it. This does not have the word just. And I know that sounds silly, but we go back to the Venn diagram, put the things where they need to be on the Venn diagram. Suddenly we see George is right. You have to subtract 10 twice. We understand why. It all makes sense. And then it was kind of one of those, like, we're all talking you over and laughing at ourselves. Oh, right, yeah, I thought this, I thought that, and you knew this. And we're all so excited that it's kind of a, what then? And so even to the point that we got kind of into it, I said, just read that one more time and we'll see. And we went back and we even saw the reading problem was material that we thought wasn't important, wound up being important. So we went back and we looked at that, we looked at word problems. We are just having a blast. Then the cool thing is, Matthew's like, okay, let's do another one. So it wasn't, this problem's done, but it was, now we see what we did. Let's take another one. And not only was I not mad at them for not taking the test, but the really cool thing is, so we get done with this lesson and they said, so for homework, I think we should, and they came up with a plan for the next day of exactly what they needed. And that's the end of that story, but it's not the end of our learning, because I think there's so many things, again, when we're asked about what makes us Montessori, that set that up, that it would not have happened if, for example, the schedule. Karen and I are really deliberate on our schedule of, we have this pizza lunch. So meanwhile, what you don't see here is I was able to dig into that because Karen's problem-solving pizza, and she's polling kids for writing, and the kids know the expectations. And so they have a pizza problem, they can go to Caitlin, or I had George, or whoever their team leader. So these things are in place to allow me to dig in. Now, this was a Tuesday on a Monday, so that made it hard, but typically we can do this because Monday, they already know what their expectations are for Tuesday. So we have all of this scheduling that goes in for our prepared environment. The other thing is the trust. So had the boys not trusted me to say, I'm not really ready, and I almost blew that, and I recognize that. I almost said, you know what? No other place do you get to decide when you take your test, and really push them on this. So I needed to trust them to say, I know they've been working really hard. Let me hear this out. And I had to take the moment to do that. They had to trust each other. You know, they had to trust themselves. They had to say, yeah, I got the right answer, but. And that wasn't quite enough. And then they just had to have this interest of, it's not about just getting the grade. So when people say, you use a textbook, you have a schedule, you take tests, why, that sounds like a pretty traditional school. But what they're missing is these elements that allow a moment like this to happen and then to go on from there. So it was pretty fun. And I'm happy to share. And if anybody has any questions or comments, thank you.